This man slaughtered an entire righteous sect, was executed as a serial killer in the real world, and then woke up inside the very Murim he destroyed. But unlike every other Murim story, the protagonist is not a hero, not a victim, and not trying to survive. He's here to slaughter. The silence on the peak of Mount Hua is not peaceful. It is the suffocating quiet of a graveyard. A single foot clad in black leather stomps into a pool of fresh blood, shattering the reflection of the setting sun. He walks through the carnage with the casual indifference of a man taking a morning stroll, dragging his blade across the stone floor. Behind him, the bodies of the Mount Hua sect, the supposed pillars of the righteous martial world, lie broken and twisted like discarded dolls. The air reeks of copper and bowels, but he doesn't flinch. He just looks bored. Surviving elders tremble on the steps of the great pagoda, their minds fracturing as they try to comprehend the monster approaching them. They scream that a demon has descended, that their legacy is being wiped out by a single man. But he ignores their wails. He calculates the distance, the angle of the sun, and the pathetic defensive stance of the last remaining grandmaster. He expected a challenge. He expected the legendary Plum Blossom swordsman to push him to his limits. Instead, an execution. Heads roll across the pavement, and the renowned masters of the martial world are reduced to meat in seconds. Standing amidst the ruin, surrounded by the strongest warriors of the age, he scratches the back of his head. He realizes that rumors are nothing but lies. The strongest sect was fragile. The thrill is gone. But just as the boredom threatens to consume him completely, the world begins to glitch. Static tears through the sky. The blood dissolves into pixels. He rips the VR headset off his face. Gasping as the cold, gray reality of his apartment rushes back in. Steam rises from the overheating machine in his hands. Dong Bongsu sits in the darkness, sweat cooling on his neck, the phantom weight of the sword replaced by the cheap plastic of a game controller. He looks at the game case on the table, Murim Online. The news calls it a murder simulator, a game for psychopaths that should be banned. A dark smile touches his lips. They are right. That's exactly why he loves it. He turns his attention to the projector screen flickering on the wall. A news anchor announces the disappearance of Mr. No, a corrupt corporate executive. Bongsu studies the man's face, not with concern, but with recognition. The game has ended, but his hunger has not. He slides the hidden door open and descends into the basement. The air here is damp and smells of bleach. In the corner, a man lies bound and gagged, eyes bulging with terror. It's Mr. No. Bongsu grips the handle of a heavy sledgehammer, resting it casually on his shoulder. He looks down at the weeping executive. He doesn't see a human being, he sees a carnivore, a predator who used his power to hurt the weak. Bongsu tosses a stack of photos onto the concrete floor, revealing No's crimes. The man screams, begging for mercy, swearing he repents. But Bongsu knows the truth about predators. They don't change, they just get caught. He whispers that he isn't a murderer, but a hunter who culls the beasts that society can't touch. He raises the hammer. The impact is wet and heavy, silencing the man's pleas instantly. But before he can strike again, the basement door splinters inward. Blinding tactical lights flood the room. Police swarm the narrow space, weapons drawn, screaming for him to freeze. Detective steps forward, listing the charges: kidnapping, torture, serial murder. Bongsu stands frozen, the hammer still in his hand, a bullet hole smoking in the wall inches from his ear. He calculates his options. The room is small, 12 officers, automatic weapons, 0 chance of survival. But his heart rate doesn't spike. Instead, a strange sense of nostalgia washes over him. The standoff, the overwhelming odds, the imminent death. It feels just like the game. He realizes he has been bored with this reality for a long time. The detective sneers, calling him a psychopath, a monster who kills for fun. Bongsu doesn't deny it. He simply smiles, his eyes glowing in the low light. If the world calls him a monster for killing monsters, then he will play the role to the end. He tightens his grip on the hammer. He knows the police will fire the moment he moves. That is exactly what he wants. He swings the weapon down on his victim with final, crushing force, ensuring the kill. The room erupts in gunfire. Bullets tear through his chest, punching the air from his lungs. He falls backward into the darkness, the pain sharp and absolute. As his consciousness fades, he doesn't pray for heaven. He prays for a world where he doesn't have to hide, a world filled with beasts he can hunt forever. Darkness swallows him. Then, violently, he erupts from freezing water. He gasps, choking on liquid, thrashing his limbs against a strong current. He drags himself onto a muddy bank, vomiting river water. Pain racks his entire body, but this isn't the numbness of death. It is the visceral, stinging pain of life. He looks at his hands. They are small, scarred, and trembling. This isn't his body. A shadow falls over him. An old man in tattered martial arts robes kicks him in the ribs, shouting about dragging his useless carcass from the marketplace. The man yells that he should have let him die. Bongsu glares up, his instinct to kill flaring instantly, but his limbs refuse to obey. He is weak, pathetically weak. The old man spits on the ground and storms out, slamming the wooden door, leaving him in the dark. Bongsu sits up, inspecting the emaciated frame he now inhabits. He touches the scars on his chest, feeling the history of abuse this body has suffered. He looks out the window. The architecture is ancient. The moon hangs heavy and bright in a sky untouched by city lights. A realization hits him like a lightning bolt. He knows this place. He crawls to the doorway, looking out at the sprawling complex of pagodas and training grounds. It is the ManhwaCapped sect, but it isn't a game anymore. The smell of rain, the biting cold, the ache in his bones, it is all real. A red, pixelated window suddenly materializes in the air before his eyes. Welcome to Murim Online. Player Dongbangsu. Thunder rumbles overhead. A twisted, maniacal laughter bubbles up from his throat, echoing into the night. His wish has been granted. He is in the world of straw shoes shuffle across packed dirt, dry rustle masking shallow, an even breathing of a boy who has forgotten hope. Thossum grips the wooden rake, knuckles white and trembling. Every missed pile of horse dung is a direct invitation for a broken rib. The stable is a tomb of cedar and rot. A horse snorts, hot breath blooming in the dim morning chill. Sunlight fractures the darkness. Heavy stable doors fly open. Machil stands framed in cross-shaped glare, radiating immediate threat. Machil's eyebrows furrow in pure disgust. He covers his nose, muttering the place smells like horse shit. He doesn't look at Thossum as human. He looks at him as a chore. Machil barks in order to follow him right now. Thossum's spine curves in practice reflex. He stutters, asking if it has to be right this instant. He isn't finished cleaning yet. A fist blurs through air, grinding Thossum's jaw into dirt with a sickening thud. The rake clatters to the floor. Machil hauls the boy up by his collar. He snarls, asking if it looks like he is fucking asking. Just because the Danri clan is feeding a stuttering orphan doesn't mean he can forget his place. Thossum is merely a slave, staring at the chaotic pile of steel. The blacksmith asks where Machil is hiding. Moving this much metal is a task for a full crew. Dongo smiles, eyes sliding shut. He makes a drinking gesture. Machil is at the Phoenix Tavern with Ying. Dongo laughs, thumb jerking towards Thossum. They have a perfectly good horse for heavy lifting. His palm slams into Thossum's back with violent impact, driving him into dirt on hands and knees. Thossum coughs, lungs seizing. Dongo stands over him with a malicious grin, barking at him to get up and start moving weapons immediately. Dongo mentions plans at the Phoenix Tavern, showing no intention of helping. Their little brother Thossum will do all the heavy lifting alone. Thossum hauls massive bundles of swords onto his back, frayed cloth groaning under rusted blades. Every step is tactical calculation. A single slip means impalement. Sharp hilts dig into his spine, drawing red lines across shoulders. The sky transitions to bruised red as sun sinks. Thossum crouches trembling with exhaustion near the final pile. The blacksmith watches with concern, noting Thossum's translucent, sickly gray skin. The old man tells Thossum he's done good work, but must rest. The boy looks pale, almost like someone on the verge of death. Thossum's face is hollow cheeks and heavy dark circles. He forces a faint smile, insisting he is fine. Walking into the red-lit street, Thossum's silhouette sways like a ghost. He whispers to empty air that it is cold. A massive silhouette with glowing red eyes blocks the path. This is Peng Dorang, a predator who views Thossum's existence as personal insult. Peng Dorang bellows, asking who the hell the boy is, ordering him to fuck off. Thossum hunches, stammering an apology. He is too slow. A massive strike connects with Thossum's skull, generating a violent red explosion. Thossum lies face down, blood pooling in mud. It was all wrong from the moment he was born into a world like this. His fingers twitch one last time. He whispers a final plea for someone to save him. Darkness swallows the street and shatters with cold, blue light. A single bloodshot eye snaps open amidst messy black hair. The boy sits up in the straw, clutching his chest, the phantom ache of a heart that should have stopped. But the mind behind the eyes is no longer the orphan. He looks into a water trough at a reflection that is intense and predatory. The real Thossum was beaten to death by Peng Dorang, and he has seized control of the vessel. A glowing blue holographic interface appears. The system welcomes him to Murim Online, the world where the strongest reside. He sifts through the dead boy's memories with cold precision. Physical body is in advanced decay. He watches the status window, asking if he is human or player. This place is undeniably real. The stench of horse dung and cold of the stable are too vivid for simulation. Machil stands in shadows of the doorway, calculating the weight of a life against the executioner's blade. Killing the boy here is easy, but a corpse triggers a search ending with Machil's own head on the chopping block. The door splinters under violent kick. Machil sneers, tossing a wooden bowl of beige slop onto dirt near Thossum's feet. A final insult. Thossum does not flinch. He watches the bowl with cold detachment. 2 weeks have passed since he woke in this vessel, and silence has been his greatest weapon for observation. He gathers data from filtered sunlight and harsh shouts of outer disciples. The people speak in Chinese characters, yet geography refuses to align with any known map of China. This is a world governed by martial arts. He watches through gaps in stable wood as soldiers practice. Blades glow with lethal, supernatural blue energy. Men move faster than the eye can follow, defying gravity. In this world, martial arts are the breath of the living and silence of the dead. The protagonist stares at the translucent blue status window, a digital ghost in an ancient world. The question grinds against his mind: is he human, or player trapped in simulation? He clenches a fist, feeling grit under fingernails and sharp ache of fractured ribs. The people here possess raw emotions. They bleed, sneer, and move with unpredictable chaos. Guak Dongo leans against the splintered stable door, purple robes catching dim morning light. He stares at the figure in straw, lip curling into sneer. He demands to know why his little brother is lounging while others suffer. Every word designed to provoke a flinch that never comes. The black-haired boy does not move, gaze fixed on a translucent blue interface only he can see. Dongo's grin widens, eyes narrowing to slits of pure malice. He steps forward, narrowing distance for a physical strike. He calls Sasam a son of a bitch. He's been waiting for this moment to settle the score. Reaching down, Dongo's hand hovers over a wooden bowl filled with beige slop. Expecting a plea for mercy, the boy reacts with sudden, mechanical fluidness. He seizes the bowl, consuming the contents in seconds. Dongo freezes, mouth hanging open in shock. Irritation boils over into a shout, face reddening as he barks that his Hyung is still speaking. He leans in to deliver a final threat, hand raising to strike. He never sees the jagged stone hidden in the boy's palm. Thrusting upward, the boy drives the gray blade directly into soft tissue of Dongo's neck. Cyan energy flares at impact, mingling with violent spray of crimson. Dongo's hands fly to his throat, fingers clutching the wound as blood leaks through knuckles. A wet, gurgling sound, light in his eyes fracturing into pure terror. The boy stands over him, shadow swallowing the dying man. He speaks for the first time, voice a cold, level rasp. He informs the dying man that Guak Dongo's little brother died long ago. A declaration of vacancy, a new soul has claimed the vessel. Dongo's eyes roll back, body twitching as he collapses. The protagonist does not hesitate, arm moving in rhythmic, violent blur, stabbing downward again and again, severing the last threads of Dongo's life. Red and purple motion effects paint the stable walls. The silence that follows is heavy and metallic. The boy wipes hot blood from his face with deliberate sweep of his forearm, eyes glowing with predatory red hue. He stares at bloodstained hands, questioning if he is human or merely player in simulation. The grit under nails and stench of horse dung provide sensory answer. This place is undeniably real. A world where the weak are harvested as prey and the strong worshipped as gods. The great law of Murim grinds against his consciousness. In a land governed by physics of slaughter, he no longer needs to hide his true nature. A large, translucent blue wolf spirit manifests behind him, howling toward purple sky in silent roar of dominance, the manifestation of hunger that the Danri clan cannot contain. He looks toward stone gates of the village, mind already mapping tactical geography of surrounding jungle. Every silhouette in the distance is no longer a person, it is a target. As soon as this damaged body recovers, the hunt begins. He will not merely survive, he will become the apex predator of this new Murim. Sun sits behind a massive, multi-tiered temple, casting the world into deep, sitting amidst the cooling pool of blood. He doesn't panic. Most men would be vomiting or fleeing, but he remains perfectly still, his back pressed against the gore-stained planks of the cabin, wiping a smear of red from his cheek. His eyes dart sideways, not in fear, but in calculation. This isn't just a murder scene, it's a testing ground. Calculations run through his mind at lightning speed. Usually, a target like this wouldn't be worth the effort of the hunt, but there is a specific variable he needs to isolate. He needs to know if the rules of this reality match the code he knows. Whispering a single command, he summons the anomaly. Inventory. A blue, aqueous interface ripples into existence, defying the physics of the dark, wooden world around him. Staring at the swirling panel, he notes the deviation immediately. In Murim Online, the inventory was a rigid grid, mushrooms here, weapons there. But this is different. Reaching into the digital void, his arm disappears up to the elbow. He feels no walls, only vast, empty space. He estimates the volume at nearly 300 square meters. It's not just a backpack, it's a warehouse. And if it can hold objects, he needs to answer the grim question burning in his mind. Can it hold evidence? Glancing down at the lifeless body at his feet, his expression hardens. This is the moment of truth. Gripping the corpse's face with a vice-like clutch, he forces his fingers over the dead eyes and cold forehead. He doesn't hesitate. He doesn't mourn. He simply executes the command. Store. Violent blue energy erupts around his hand. The corpse doesn't just vanish, it distorts, the jaw unhinging in a silent digital scream as the physical matter is shredded into data. A massive vacuum sucks the flesh, bone, and blood into the floating blue square, leaving nothing but clean floorboards behind. Standing alone in the silence, a cold thrill shoots through his nervous system. The body is gone. The blood is gone. It is the perfect crime scene cleanup. But his mind is already racing to the next terrifying possibility. If a corpse can be stored, what about a living human? Would they die in stasis? Or would they remain frozen in time, waiting for him to pull them back out for his own amusement? Biting his thumb knuckle, a sinister grin cracks his stoic mask. He needs more test subjects. Transitioning from the darkness of the cabin to the blinding sun of the courtyard, he shifts gears instantly. The predator vanishes. In his place stands Sasam, the village idiot, exploding into motion. A wooden broom handle cracks against his shoulder. He absorbs the blow, forcing his body to crumple dramatically. He knows the physics of the hit. It wasn't lethal, just painful, but he plays the part perfectly, stammering and cowering before the abuser. Hey, half-wit, I heard you went mute. Ma chill. A low-level thug with a mustache and an ego 3 times his size looms over him, grabbing his collar. Ma-Chil spits insult into his face, poking his chest with a calloused finger. He demands the horse be walked, bobbing his head frantically. He accepts the degradation. Every fiber of his being wants to snap Ma-Chil's wrist. But tactically, this is the wrong move. Not yet. He needs the cover of incompetence. Walking the horse through the bustling market, he maintains the facade. He keeps his eyes low, scanning the periphery while appearing vacant. But the world won't let him be. Striking the back of his neck, a sharp rock tears the skin. Pain flares, but he doesn't flinch instinctively. He forces a delayed reaction, turning slowly to see two children jeering from an alleyway. They mock his stutter. They mock his silence. For a split second, the mask slips, staring at the chubby child. He lets his killing intent leak out. The air around him seems to darken, the pressure dropping as a red. Demonic aura flares behind his silhouette. He visualizes the child's silence, permanent silence. The boy freezes, rubbing his eyes, sensing a primal fear he can't understand. Snapping the mask back into place, he smiles a goofy, harmless grin and pats the horse. He walks away, leaving the child weeping in terror, confused by the monster he thought he saw. But the monster is real, and he is losing patience. Returning to the armory, he finds Ma-Chil complaining. The older man expects a dirty, lazy servant. Instead, he finds the weapons polished to a mirror shine. Ma-Chil stares, dumbfounded. The idiot has done the work of 3 men. Standing with a fixed, subservient smile, he nods enthusiastically, playing the role of the reformed simpleton. But labor isn't the only tool he's using to manipulate this target. Extending his hands, he offers a heavy brown pouch. Ma-Chil takes it, skepticism turning to shock as he glimpses the gold inside. Greed instantly overrides suspicion. Laughing loud enough to shake the walls, Ma-Chil slaps his back, praising him. You finally learned how the world works. Yeah. Watching the man count the coins, he suppresses a sneer. Ma-Chil thinks this is a bribe for good treatment. He doesn't realize he just accepted the fare for his own journey to the afterlife. The money ensures Ma-Chil will be distracted, drunk, and exactly where he wants him tonight. Night falls over the city. Ma-Chil, flush with cash and arrogance, struts into the Phoenix Tavern. He demands the premium courtesan, Chosian, throwing the pouch at the tavern owner with the confidence of a king. Guided to a private room on the 2nd floor, Ma-Chil waits, trembling with anticipation. The door slides open. The woman enters, beautiful and submissive. Ma-Chil is completely absorbed, his lust blinding him to his surroundings. He orders her to pour a drink, his eyes glued to her every move. He doesn't notice the faint creak of the floorboards outside. He doesn't see the shadows stretching across the hallway. Crouched in the darkness behind the thin wooden wall, the predator presses his face against the planks, finding a splintered gap in the wood. A single eye opens, the pupil glows a distinct, blood red in the gloom, breathing slowly to match the rhythm of the room inside. He watches. He isn't just a voyeur, he is a hunter waiting for the prey to expose it. The sound of greed is jagged. Heavy bronze coins are clinking together outside the Phoenix Tavern, drowning out any sense of morality. We are watching the heavy-set tavern owner counting a bribe in the shadows, his fingers trembling with anticipation. He isn't looking at the customer. He is only looking at the gold. He sneers, gesturing up the stairs, and tells the small, hooded figure that if he waits in the room at the end of the 2nd floor, he'd bring the girl, Chosian, right away. The smaller figure, Zasim, bows his head silently. The owner thinks he's dealing with a mute, a terrified weakling paying a fortune for a moment of safety. But he is wrong, as Sasim turns away. His eyes aren't fearful. They are dead calm. He is calculating the distance, the noise level, and the precise moment to drop the act. The owner believes he is sharing a sheep, never realizing he has just invited a wolf into the fold. Sasim ascends the wooden stairs with the silence of a ghost. The floorboards don't even creak under his weight. He reaches the designated room, the sounds of the tavern below fading into a dull hum. Inside, the target, Ma-Chil, is shirtless and posing in the dim red light. The man is muttering to himself, flexing his muscles, completely oblivious to the shift in air pressure as the door slides shut behind him. He's bragging to an empty room about his own vitality, assuming the visitor is just prey. Sasim doesn't hesitate. He assesses the target's posture, noting the exposed neck and the relaxed stance. He grips a length of white cloth with practiced lethality and steps into the man's blind spot. There's no warning. He whips the cloth around Ma-Chil's throat. The knot cinches tight in a single, fluid motion. Ma-Chil's eyes bulge, pupils constricting as the oxygen is violently cut off. He claws at the fabric, fingernails scraping uselessly against the tightening noose. But Sasim's leverage is absolute. Leveraging his center of gravity, Sasim wrenches the larger man backward. He slams him into the floorboards. He mounts the thrashing body immediately, using his legs to pin the torso while leaning back to maximize the choke. Ma-Chil's legs kick wildly against the floor, blurring in the low light, but Sasim rides the convulsions. He stares up at the ceiling with a manic, wide-eyed grin, feeling the vibrations of the dying man's throat slow down, fade, and finally stop. Silence returns to the room, but as the last breath leaves Ma-Chil's body, the reality of the room fractures. A glowing blue rectangle manifests in the darkness. Sasim stares at it, his chest heaving. The system informs him that he has gained experience points. His heart hammers against his ribs. He processes the implications instantly. Killing provides experience. Experience provides levels. Levels provide power. He realizes the equation is simple. In this world, murder is currency. He understands now that he can become infinitely strong. He collapses back onto the floor, covering his face in twisted euphoria. The world isn't a prison anymore, it's a hunting ground. He rolls over, his gaze landing on the corner of the room. A woman is sleeping there, curled under a blanket, completely undisturbed by the violence. Dawson creeps closer on all fours, observing her like a biologist examining a specimen. He concludes that she is an herbivore. She lacks the will to fight. She is beneath notice. He decides she isn't even worth the stamina it would take to strangle her. Instead, he turns to the inventory system. He presses his hand against the stolen money pouch and watches it vanish into digital storage. Satisfied that his practice with the interface is paying off. But he doesn't just leave. He needs to stage the scene. He lifts Ma-Chil's limp corpse, hoisting the heavy weight up to the ceiling beam. He ties off the rope with meticulous precision. He frames the hanging body with his hands, looking through his fingers, lamenting that he doesn't have a camera to capture the artistry of the death. He slips out into the shadows, leaving the stage set. Down the hall, the tavern owner is losing his patience. He stomps up the hallway, banging his fist against the lattice door, shouting for Ma-Chil to come out. He yells that he's being ignored, his veins bulging with irritation, rage overtaking caution. The owner smashes his shoulder against the wood and stumbles into the room, ready to demand his coin, but the shout dies in his throat. The woman is screaming in the corner, and there, swaying gently in the stagnant air, is Ma-Chil. The heavy thud of the body turning on the rope fills the silence. The owner looks up, his face draining of color, realizing too late that the sheep he let in was something else entirely. The predator has already left the building. The Anhui province, a land sliced by the Hua and Yangtze rivers, where commerce flows as freely as the water, but where money gathers, rot inevitably follows. To combat the rising tide of bandits and unorthodox villains, the great clans established order. Among them stood the Danri clan, a force defined not by sheer numbers, but by the ruthless efficiency of its intelligence division, the Black Crow Squad. They were the eyes of the province, superior even to the beggar sect. But recently, those eyes had been blinded by a singular, baffling anomaly. Squad leader Gi Dihyo stared at the scrolls piling up on his desk. The ink detailed a massacre, yet every conclusion read the same: suicide. Over 100 deaths in a few short months. A plague of self-destruction. He scanned the reports, his mind rejecting the surface-level data. 1 or 2 desperate souls a month was a tragedy. 100 was a statistical impossibility. He knew the patterns of human misery, and this was too clean, too perfect. Every piece of evidence unequivocally pointed to suicide, leaving no thread to pull, no suspect to interrogate. But Gi Dihyo did not believe in perfect crimes. He narrowed his eyes at the latest report. He knew that if this wasn't mass hysteria, then someone had discovered a method of murder that left absolutely no trace. And if he didn't find the flaw in their technique soon, the body count would never stop. The latest victim was Ma-Chil, an armory artisan from his own clan. The location, the Phoenix Tavern. Dihyo stood in the center of the room where the man had been found hanging. His subordinates had already swept the perimeter, confirming the impossible. The door had been barred from the inside. The windows were sealed shut with X-shaped planks. He moved to the walls, his gaze dissecting the architecture. If the killer didn't walk through the door, they had to have come through the structure itself. He ran a hand over the wooden logs that formed the partition wall. His mind worked through the mechanics of the construction. If these logs could be slid out, they would offer a silent passage. It was the only logical entry point. But as he examined the joinery, logic failed him. The logs were set deep into grooves within the ceiling and floor beams. To remove a single log, one would have to dismantle the entire roof. He stood in the silence of the room, the scent of death still lingering. No secret passages, no hidden mechanisms, a true locked room. Dihyo felt the chill of a dead end. But if the physical evidence offered no answers, perhaps the timeline would. He turned to his lieutenant. Someone had been in the room next door when Ma-Chil died. A witness or a suspect. The name given was Sasam, an insignificant member of the Danri clan. Miles away, beneath a clouded sky, Sasam stood beside his horse. He was not thinking about the investigation. He was staring at a blue, translucent screen that only he could see. Attributes, strength, agility, experience points. He analyzed the data from his last kill. The experience yielded from a human target had been significantly higher than anything else. He deduced the system's cold logic: the stronger the opponent, the greater the reward. But he also recognized his own fragility. He tightened his grip on the reins. To fight a proper martial artist of the Danri clan now would be suicide. The gap in power was a chasm he couldn't yet leap. He needed a bridge. He needed prey that sat somewhere between a helpless commoner and a trained warrior. He needed fodder. As if summoned by his intent, voices grated against his ears. Well, haven't seen you in a while. Yeah. Dawson didn't flinch. He recognized the tone before he recognized the faces. Street thugs, former tormentors from a life he had already discarded. They surrounded him, mocking his silence, mistaking his calculation for fear. They didn't realize they weren't looking at a victim anymore. They were looking at a player farming for XP. The only question was, were they worth the effort? He let them herd him into a dark alleyway, his eyes tracking the geometry of the trap. Barrels, grates, narrow walls. He ran the scenario through his mind. He could kill them all right here. It would be easy. He could store their corpses in his inventory, dump them miles away, and leave no blood to stain the cobblestones. But he hesitated, not out of mercy, but out of pragmatism. If he caused a scene now, in daylight, the risk of discovery spiked. He was still level 1. Being hunted by the authorities or the clan for a messy triple homicide yielded a poor return on investment. The experience points from these low-level dregs might not justify the heat it would bring down on him. He decided to play the role. He would take a beating, let them feel powerful, and then dismantle them later when the shadows were deeper. A fist slammed into his face. He rolled with the impact, cataloging the damage, keeping his expression stoic. Stop. Yeah. A new voice cut through the abuse. A man emerged from the deeper shadows. Jang Ho. Dynamic shifted instantly. This wasn't just bullying anymore. Dawson watched the newcomer step forward, a smile playing on his lips that didn't reach his eyes. The playful torture was over. The real threat had just arrived. Jang Ho ignored Sasam, his attention fixated solely on the brown horse. He stroked the animal's neck with a possessive greed. He spoke of his superior, the dark society leader, a man with a covetous eye for fine steeds. Dawson watched Jang Ho's hand on the horse. He didn't hear a thief, he heard a murderer. He analyzed the micro-expressions on Jang Ho's face, the dismissal in his posture, the glint in his eyes. This man had no intention of letting the owner of the horse walk out of this alley. The plan was simple: kill the boy, take the beast, gift it to the boss. The equation changed. Calculations of risk and discovery evaporated. If he remained passive, the outcome was death. What do you think? Jang Ho asked, mocking him. Dawson looked up. His internal restraint snapped. Then just kill me. Why bother asking twice? Yeah. Jang Ho froze, a smile dropping from his face. The mute victim had spoken. The air in the alley grew heavy. Dawson didn't reach for a weapon on his belt. He reached into the air itself. A blue screen flickered into existence, and with it, the realization that the thugs were locked in a cage with something far worse than a beast. Inventory. Yeah. The command was a whisper, but the effect was a thunderclap. Base distorted. A swirling vortex of blue and white energy ripped open the gloom of the alley. Jang Ho's confusion lasted only a fraction of a second before it was replaced by primal terror. He barely had time to scream before the reality of his mistake washed over him. Chains spectral and heavy erupted from the void. Dawson moved with the efficiency of a machine. There was no hesitation, no wasted movement. The thugs who had mocked him moments ago were now scrambling over each other, their screams bouncing off the narrow walls. Blood splattered against the stone. Ping. Congratulations. Level up. Dawson ignored the gore on his hands. He focused on the text floating in his vision. The math had been correct. The yield was sufficient. In the swirling dust and red energy, one of the surviving thugs scrambled backward, eyes wide and wet with tears. He looked up at the silhouette standing amidst the carnage. A demon, the thug gasped, his voice cracking. He's a demon. The alley was no longer a place of ambush. It was a slaughterhouse. The explosion of light had shattered the thugs' morale instantly. To them, the chains and the swirling energy weren't martial arts, they were witchcraft. One man, his mind broken by the sight of his leader being consumed by the void, scrambled toward the exit. He ran toward the light at the end of the alley, his breath coming in ragged, terrified gasps. He didn't look back. He just needed to escape the demon in the shadows. He reached for the light, a desperate prayer on his lips, but the demon was faster. A vertical slash ended the prayer before it began. The thug collapsed, his face pressing into the cold stone. His final thoughts a chaotic mix of confusion and regret. He had only wanted easy money. He had only wanted to bully a helpless victim. He died realizing he was the one who was helpless. Dawson stood over the body. He didn't feel triumph. He felt nothing but the cold satisfaction of a task completed. He grabbed the corpse by the collar and dragged it back into the darkness. There was still one loose end to tie up. Deep in the shadows, the last surviving thug woke up. He groggily opened his eyes, only to find a nightmare waiting for him. The mute boy was sitting there, calm, composed, and terrifyingly articulate. He asked if the thug was awake. The thug scrambled back, pressing himself against the cold wall. He stared at Sasam's eyes, glowing with a red, unnatural light. Sasam didn't waste time with threats. He pressed a blade against the man's throat. He needed information. The first man, Jang Ho, had possessed a killing intent and arrogance that suggested he wasn't just a street rat. He was part of something larger. Dawson asked, his voice steady, who the guy was, the one who had gotten cocky and died first. The thug spilled everything. Terror acted as a potent truth serum. Jang Ho was an executive of the Black Society, a wicked sect ruling the back alleys of Bingyang. And the order to kill Sasam and steal the horse hadn't been a random whim. It had come from the top. Bang Poyom. the leader of the Black Society. Thasum absorbed the information, his mind racing. An executive, a leader, a hierarchy. He didn't see a criminal organization. He saw a leveling structure. If the Black Society operated like a syndicate, then they had ranks, minions, executives, bosses, and the logic of the system. That meant a steady progression of experience points. He had been looking for prey to bridge the gap between commoners and martial artists, and fate had just delivered an entire ecosystem of targets to his doorstep. Thasum said that was good, a cold smile touching his lips. He told the man to reveal everything he knew, adding that if the information was useful, he might let him live. The thug's eyes lit up with pathetic hope. He poured out every secret, every location, every name, believing he was buying his life. He was wrong. Thasum listened, memorized, and then finished the job. He opened his inventory. The blue vortex swallowed the evidence. The alley was empty again, save for the horse and the hunter. Thasum sat in the silence, exhaling a breath he felt he had been holding for years. A notification window hovered in his vision. Level up. He looked at his hands, the scars from years of abuse, the calluses, the fresh wounds from the fight, they were gone. His skin was flawless. He clenched his fist, feeling the renewed vitality surging through his muscles. The level up didn't just increase his stats, it reset his physical state. He realized the tactical implication immediately. This was a second life. If he was close to a level up during a fight, he could afford to take fatal risks. He could trade damage for damage, knowing that the moment he crossed the XP threshold, he would be reborn. But there was a downside. He recalled the explosion of light that had filled the alley. It was too flashy. In the Murim, flashy techniques attracted attention, and attention attracted masters who could crush a level 2 novice with a single finger. The system's visual effects were a liability. He whispered to the darkness that he needed to hide it. He couldn't let anyone see the inventory or the level up light. A hunter hiding among his prey had to appear ordinary. He had to be boring. He stood up, dusting off his clothes. He grabbed the reins of his horse. It was time to test his camouflage. He walked out of the alley and into the bustling night market of the village. The transition was jarring. Moments ago, he was a demon in the dark. Now, he was just a traveler leading a horse through a crowd of laughing, drinking villagers. He kept his head down, blending into the flow of humanity. He looked like everyone else. He felt the gaze of the crowd slide off him. Uninterested. This was his greatest weapon. When you are impossible to distinguish, you become the ultimate predator. He solidified his plan. He would hunt the Black Society. He would dismantle them piece by piece, climbing their hierarchy ladder to power. He would grind until he was strong enough to survive in this ruthless world. He thought that he needed to get stronger fast, his eyes scanning the faces in the crowd. He told himself he would do so by killing more and stronger beasts. He was so focused on his internal strategy that he almost missed the shadow looming over him. A hand, heavy and calloused, clamped onto his shoulder. It wasn't a friendly greeting. It was a vice grip. The voice asked if he was Thasum. It was deep, authoritative, and laced with suppressed violence. Thasum froze. His instincts screamed at him. This wasn't a thug. This wasn't a low-level mob. He turned his head slowly, his eye locking onto the man behind him. It was a face defined by a stern mustache and eyes that had seen too much death. The man asked if he was the one who had killed Ma-Chil. The question hit Thasum like a physical blow. Ma-Chil, suicide victim, the case that the Black Crow Squad was investigating. Thasum looked down. The man's fist was glowing with swirling blue energy. Fracture in the code. A warning in red. The system screamed a critical error. But for him, it was merely a confirmation. He sat motionless in the rustic darkness, staring at the floating text. The system claimed the error was in the Murim online game engine. But he knew better. The error wasn't in the software. The error was him. By all rights, a soul from another dimension shouldn't exist in this world. His very presence was a virus the system couldn't quarantine. He didn't panic. Panic was efficient only when it led to a solution. Instead, he analyzed the discrepancy with cold detachment. If his existence was a glitch, then perhaps the rules of this world were now his to bend. Dismissing the warning with a flick of his finger, he turned his attention to the result of his survival. Level 2. The ambiguous question marks that once obscured his potential had solidified into functional gauge bars. He watched the interface shift, his single red eye tracking the changes. Reality, it seemed, was finally bending to the mechanics of a game. But as he scrolled through the standard passive skills, thrust, block, his gaze snagged on something alien at the bottom of the list. Spirit Eye. It wasn't in the manual. It wasn't a standard technique. It was a variable he hadn't calculated. Before he could hypothesize its function, the skill force activated. A glowing blue number materialized in the air. 20. Then 19. A proximity alarm. The system flagged it immediately. An enemy with a level difference of 10 or more. He stood up, his body tensing not out of fear, but out of readiness. The countdown was steady, rhythmic. 15. 14. He analyzed the speed of the approach. It was too deliberate for an assassin, too heavy for a thief. If an enemy had infiltrated the Danry family estate, they would be moving with lethal urgency. This pace, this was arrogance. It was the stride of someone who belonged here. 11. He unclenched his fist. This wasn't an invasion, it was an inspection. A master from within the family was coming for him. 10. He did the math instantly. A 10-level gap. In a game, that was a challenge. In reality, it was a chasm. He remembered the blood and desperation it took just to reach level 2. To bridge a gap of 10 levels, how much death would that require? If XP was harvested from lives, the calculation was grim. Thousands, tens of thousands of ordinary people. The sheer volume of slaughter required to match the monster walking toward his door was staggering. A dark, intrusive thought coiled in his mind. If he killed this man, this master approaching him, he wouldn't need thousands of commoners. This single life would be a shortcut to power, a jackpot of experience points walking right into his trap. But he knew he couldn't cash that check yet. The door shattered open. The unit leader, Gi. He didn't flinch because he was scared. He flinched because he needed to look scared. He widened his eyes, dilating his pupils to mimic terror. He let his posture collapse, shrinking into the corner like a frightened animal. The question was heavy, but the hand gripping his collar was heavier. Gi asked if he had killed Machel. He felt the interrogation wasn't just verbal. Gi wasn't looking for a confession. He was looking for a reaction. He let out a pathetic stammer as blue energy, true chi, flooded his system. It was a violent intrusion. The unit leader was searching his internal pathways, hunting for even a trace of martial arts training. He knew that if his internal energy pushed back, even for a microsecond, he would be exposed. He had to be a vessel. Empty, hollow. He forced his body to go limp, allowing the devastating energy to ravage him without resistance. He had to play the part of the useless. Broken sign perfectly. The pressure vanished. Gi dropped him. The test was over. To the master's eyes, he was nothing but an empty shell. But as the door closed, leaving him in the darkness, the empty shell opened his eye. The terror evaporated instantly, replaced by the cold, red glow of a predator who had just successfully deceived its prey. The investigation ended, but the death did not. The suicide epidemic that had plagued the region vanished overnight, only to be replaced by something far more violent. A killing wind had begun to blow through Bingyang. Weeks later, in the safety of a crowded tavern, the truth was being written in whispers and shouts. The drunkard bellowed, slamming his fist on the table, asking if anyone had heard of the nameless hero. The title was shouted with reverence. The locals didn't know the face. They only knew the results. The unorthodox factions, gangs that had terrorized the streets for years, were being dismantled. Not arrested, butchered. The man cheered that the White Tiger Unit and the Red Wolf Gate had been exterminated. His face flushed with wine and victory. He laughed, unaware of the irony. He praised a hero, thinking this savior was acting out of justice. He didn't understand the mechanics of the world. He didn't know that to the person holding the blade. These weren't criminals being punished. They were simply experience points being farmed. His companion hissed, looking over his shoulder, telling him to be quiet because there was still one left, the Black Society, and worrying what would happen if they heard him. The drunkard roared to let them hear, proclaiming that their Lord Nameless Hero would crush them too. In the corner, a figure rose from his seat. He hadn't touched his drink. He had only been listening to the location of his next hunting ground. He stepped out into the storm. The rain hammered against his wide straw hat, washing away the warmth of the tavern. He adjusted his cloak, his movements precise and purposeful. The villagers thought a guardian angel had descended to save them. They projected their hopes onto his slaughter. They called him a hero. He found the misunderstanding amusing. He didn't care about their safety. He didn't care about justice or the balance of power in the Murim world. He had calculated the XP required for the next level. He had analyzed the Black Society not as a threat to the innocent, but as a density of high-value targets. He stopped before the looming gate of the Black Society. The lightning flashed, casting a shadow long and sharp against the entrance. The torrential downpour masked the carnage to come, washing away the scent of blood before it could settle on the stone. At the reinforced gates of the Black Society, a fatal complacency had set in. The guard dozed, his grip on the spear loosening as the rhythm of the rain lulled him. He was woken not by duty, but by a sharp strike to the head from his partner. The guard scolded his partner frantically, asking if he was seriously sleeping right now. The rumors of the nameless righteous swordsman had turned every shadow into a threat. 3 units had already been erased. The Black Society was the last bastion, the final stronghold of the underworld in Bingyang. He complained bitterly that with the Black Society standing alone, his partner was dozing off as if they weren't walking on the edge of a blade. The sentence was never finished. A jagged line of crimson appeared across the visual field, a system interface rendering a critical hit. The guard stared, unable to process the sudden silence of his partner. He reached for his sword, his heart hammering, locking eyes with a hooded figure standing in the downpour. Glowing white eyes pierced through the dark. He stammered, terrified that it might be the nameless one. The figure didn't let them speak. He didn't let them beg. With a single, fluid arc, he silenced the gatekeepers. He watched dispassionately as their heads tumbled down the wet steps. Heavy thuds lost in the storm, their HP bars depleting to 0. He stepped over the bodies and placed a hand on the wooden gates. They groaned open, revealing the massive courtyard within. He didn't sneak in. He walked right into the center of the trap. He stood alone under the moonlight, the rain soaking his cloak. He sensed the vibration in the air before he saw the arrows. A flurry of projectiles launched from the darkness, aimed to turn him into a porcupine, but he had already calculated their trajectory. As the arrows hissed through empty air, shadows moved. A massive army, the full force of the Black Society, poured into the courtyard. Hundreds of men, armed and desperate, circled him, creating a wall of steel. The leader's voice dripped with arrogance as he proclaimed that he knew the nameless rat would eventually come there. He thought this was a siege. He thought they had the advantage of numbers. The hunter looked at the sea of enemies and didn't see a threat. He saw a buffet. He saw an efficiency calculation. He reasoned that if they bunched up like this, he wouldn't have to hunt them down individually, saving valuable time. The order was given to kill him. To kill that bastard. The mob surged forward, tidal wave of steel and shouting. He moved. He didn't dodge, he met the wave head on. He leaped into the air, his blade charging with a violent, oscillating red energy. This wasn't a duel, it was an execution command. Thousand Army Sweep. System skill activated. A crescent of devastating red force exploded outward, tearing through the front ranks. It wasn't a fight, it was a meat grinder. Bodies were flung into the air, weapons shattered, and the formation was broken in a single heartbeat. He landed and kept moving, blur of black robes in red death. He parried a strike from a commander and sent him flying back into his own men. The soldiers froze, looking at the carnage, their eyes widening. This wasn't a martial artist. This was a calamity. A dagger flashed from the blind spot, a frantic attempt to end the monster. Another warrior, wreathed in blue lightning, lunged from the side, cursing him as a despicable son of a bitch. He shouted for the intruder to just give up his neck. The hunter didn't turn. He didn't panic. He simply accessed the interface that only he could see. Inventory. Reality glitched. A massive blue energy blade erupted from empty space, bypassing the laws of physics. It impaled the attacker before he could even understand what had happened. The attacker gasped, unable to understand how a knife had struck from behind. The battlefield was a slaughterhouse, but even a gamer can get careless when farming mobs. Jluck, glowing blade caught his shoulder. Blood sprayed against the rain. He stumbled back, his boots sliding in the mud, a health bar flashing yellow. The older man, the one who struck the blow, grinned, asking if he had finally landed a hit. He looked at the wound, his confidence returning. He mocked the intruder, noting that after seeing how he sliced up his boys, he thought the intruder was a monster, but realized he was just a human after all, a human that could be killed. The enemy laughed. They thought they saw weakness. They thought they saw mortality. He knelt in the mud, the pain registering as a dull throb. But as the man mocked him, something shifted. The mask of the righteous hero slipped. The enemy wondered why the bastard was smiling. He looked up. His face wasn't twisted in pain. It was twisted in ecstasy. The red eye glowed with a terrifying, psychotic hunger. He wasn't afraid of dying. He was enjoying the grind. The smile was the last thing they understood. He lunged. The human they thought they had cornered vanished, replaced by a demon of pure violence. The screams that followed weren't battle cries. They were the sounds of prey realizing there was no escape. The lone survivor huddled in the shadows, cursing and asking if they were really all getting killed by one guy. He listened to his comrades die. He tried to rationalize it. He tried to bargain with the universe. He claimed they just extorted people and sold some women, insisting there were people worse than them, and questioned why they were just fodder. He realized the cruel truth of his existence. To the monster outside, they weren't villains with backstories. They were just XP. They were fodder to be harvested. He cursed, telling himself he had to kill the monster there. The survivors signaled the hidden archers to fire. A volley of arrows hissed through the rain, disappearing into the darkness where the monster stood. Silence followed. The man peered into the gloom, hope rising. He asked if the monster was dead. Grunch, splat. The answer came not from the target, but from the archers falling from the rooftops, their bodies hitting the wet ground like sacks of grain. He called out, asking if the others were all dead. He turned back. The silhouette was there, standing calmly in the rain, unscathed, unstoppable. He screamed, demanding to know what the hell he wanted and what they had done to deserve it. He yelled that the man wasn't the Grim Reaper and asked what right he had to judge them. Blade silenced the philosophy. He stepped over the dying man, his voice colder than the rain, stating that he only wanted one thing, their lives. The courtyard was silent now. The rain washed over the piles of the black society, turning the mud into a red slurry. He stood amidst his harvest, his breath steady. The warm-up is over. The mobs were cleared. He raised his head, looking toward the inner sanctum of First came the White Tiger unit. He understood that killing Jang Ho had given him strength, but the gap between his level and the Black Faction's elites was still fatal. Direct confrontation would be suicide. Though he changed the rules. He stopped fighting like a duelist and began hunting like a saboteur, luring enemies into traps, striking from the shadows, burning safehouses to ash. He watched buildings collapse under raging fire as screams echoed from within, indifferent to the cost. By the time the White Tiger unit leader sensed something was wrong, more than half his men were already corpses. In the aftermath, officials and townspeople clung desperately to meaning. They projected hope onto the carnage and gave the unseen killer a name: the Nameless Righteous Swordsman. The mask proved useful. Reputation spread faster than steel, rotting morale before blades ever crossed. Enemies hesitated. Some fled. Others froze. When he finally slaughtered the White Tiger unit leader, system acknowledged the massacre. He reached level 5. Congratulations. You have acquired a new skill. New instruments of violence filled the interface. King Gong, body lightning technique, the three forces sword art, method designed not for duels, but annihilation. With these tools, direct confrontation became viable. By the time village children began reenacting the legend in their games, the Red Wolf Gate had already been erased from existence. Only one unorthodox faction remained in Bingyang, Black Society. Rain poured relentlessly over the traditional estate, drumming against slate and stone. Inside, a man sat with his back to the entrance, gazing into the storm. A massive snake emblem adorned his robe, marking him as the apex predator of the region. Bang Poyam, leader of the Black Society. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the courtyard where the hunter stood motionless, a void amid the downpour. Bang Poyam turned, studying the figure in silence. He measured the rumors against reality, testing the weight of the legend with his own eyes. The intruder offered nothing, no confirmation, no denial. Bang Poyam mocked the contradiction before him, a supposed champion of justice wrapped in concealment. The hunter answered plainly. He had never claimed to be righteous. The admission unsettled Bang Poyam. If the man was not driven by justice, then the slaughter of the unorthodox faction demanded another explanation. The hunter gave it without flinching. He did not kill for righteousness. He killed because it was necessary. Laughter burst from Bang Poyam as understanding settled in. The town had fooled itself. The hunter corrected that assumption as well. No deception had been necessary. People believed what they wanted to believe. Steel rang as Bang Poyam drew his sword. Whatever the truth behind the legend, it no longer mattered. Curiosity sharpened into bloodlust. Whether hero or butcher, the man before him was prey. Bang Poyam attacked. Blue Chi flared as he launched forward, sword trailing light like a comet. Red Aura answered. Their clash detonated the rain itself, vaporizing droplets midair. They collided above the courtyard, force ripping through flesh and bone. The hunter was hurled backward, blood spraying from his chest as he skidded across stone. Bang Poyam sensed weakness instantly and pressed the advantage. His downward thrust seemed short until Chi warped distance itself. Diagonal slash tore through the air, carving into the hunter's shoulder. The counterstrike came just as fast. Red steel ripped across Bang Poyam's torso, blood staining the rain. Surprise flickered in his eyes, followed by exhilaration. The hunter's body was damaged. Imperfect. He attacked again. The hunter realized the pattern quickly. Every strike targeted existing wounds. Left unchecked, this would end in defeat. He lunged forward regardless, sacrificing flesh for position, intent on landing a decisive blow. Bang Poyam taunted the recklessness, probing for desperation. The hunter gathered chi, preparing the three forces sword art. Bang Poyam revealed his answer. Steel bent mid-strike, unraveling into a living chain. The whip sword coiled around the hunter's arms and torso, locking him in place. Shock registered too late. The blade snapped back violently. Serrated edges tore through cloth and muscle alike, blood erupting into the storm. Bang Poyam savored the result. Whip swords punished inexperience brutally. The hunter tore free and retreated with King Gong, creating distance despite the damage. He stood shaking in the rain, one arm shredded, breath ragged. Then the ground moved. Black, cable-like shadows rose around him. Scale surfaced beneath his feet. A massive spectral snake manifested behind him, glowing blue, jaws yawning wide enough to devour him whole. Bang Poyam advanced calmly, framed by the monstrous aura. He criticized the hunter's method, not the way of a martial artist, but of an assassin, or a predator. He explained the truth of lethal duels. Victory belonged to the one with more hidden cards. With deliberate malice, he tore open his robe. Scales covered his torso, spreading as the blue serpent roared behind him. This was the difference between them. Bang Poyam had more to reveal. The hunter had nothing left. The hunter assessed the situation grimly. The trap was complete. No further secrets remained on either side. Bang Poyam smiled, certainty hardening into execution. The giant blue snake lunged. Its jaws descended, ready to swallow the nameless demon